This is TWiT.
Right now, yakking about Web 3. We have Web 1, we have Web 2. There never was a Web 1. Web 2 named Web 1, and later Web 2 got named. These are sort of simplified ways of thinking of eras. And it seems to me you're thinking way beyond any of this. And I really like how you've kind of decoupled what you're trying to do from both time and space and the way you're doing it. But there's a lot of energy going into that. And now Jack Dorsey with Block, which used to be square, but then it got three-dimensional. He's come out with Web 5. And the interesting thing to me about that, and I was just looking at the slides earlier, I'm going to have to bring them up and we'll put them in the show notes, is that it's right from the songbook that, I and my cabal and my developers that I've been mostly talking to, and in the SSI community, which used to be nothing and is now something, and the diff with DIDs. If he succeeds, he's going in a direction. Now you're saying that's a big mistake, but I'm wondering if you can make. So I mean, if somebody doesn't want to do that, what do they do? Okay, if they buy your argument, hey, wait a minute, DIDs are the wrong approach. Forget web numeral. We're going past all of that. What do you say to that can kind of pry people off of that and start looking at what you're trying to do and say, yeah, it's better. We'll do that.
Okay. So you tease that I believe that the web was never decentralized. I can back that up with a ton of facts.
Oh yeah, I agree, but go ahead and back it up because I think it matters.
I mean, for many people in the early internet, AOL was it, and that was a garden. It was a walled garden. It wasn't actually the broader internet, and the web specifically. The first commercial use, or like the first, I guess I might get this wrong, this specific fact. I don't remember the exact company. Was it Lycos or somebody invented the idea of let's make a search engine and then we'll gather intelligence about the market from the search terms, and then we'll target advertisements to our users of our search engine. I think it was Lycos. Correct me if I'm wrong. It might be a different company, but what I do know is true is that existed in 1994.
Anyway.
So the web itself was barely 3 years old, and that business model already existed. So think back when you first got a web browser and used the web. I think most people, it was probably 95, 96, 97, maybe as late as 2001 or so. By that point, surveillance capitalism was already the dominant business model on the internet and had been for years. By the time you first used the web, it was already there. So the web itself was not ever decentralized. I mean, they say, it has a decentralized architecture. Sure, anybody can run a web server or whatever. But this gets to my bigger point, and why I dismiss sort of the Web 3 and the Web 5 stuff is that people throw around the term decentralized a lot, and I think they are using it in a confusing manner. Decentralization is about power to me, not about computers. Distributed is about computers. I mean, Facebook uses tens of thousands of computers. That's a distributed system, but nobody would argue that Facebook is decentralized, right? You don't have any kind of sovereignty over your data. It's basically you submit to their rules to use Facebook or not, right? And decentralization about power is pushing power to the edges. It allows individual people to define the role and the degree to which they interact with any system. So how much data they share, whether the system is able to store the data, can I force the data to be deleted, all that kind of stuff. And we're seeing a reassertion of this through government privacy regulations, right? Right to delete, right to be forgotten, that kind of stuff. So I don't like their use of decentralization because they are building systems that bind my personal data to their systems. I mean, the Web 5 stuff uses ION, which is sidetree, which is like an accumulation of Merkle trees, Merkle roots, and all this stuff, and gets anchored to Bitcoin. And that all sounds cool and everything, but they're also trying to solve higher level problems like discovery, search and stuff like that. And so that means that they have to store a certain amount of data on you. And so now we're also submitting to a system. Okay. And they claim to be decentralized, much like the carry people, building Glyph, say that their system's a protocol and it's decentralized. Well, it's distributed, but does it really push the power out to the edges, out to the individual users of the system? And I would argue no. And the reason you need, or the way to achieve full decentralization, is to design a system where there is actually an incentive model for people to run nodes or to support the global system as I say, an honest node operator, right? I'm going to be one of the nodes in the distributed system, and I'm going to be an honest node and protect all the people who connect to me. You have to have an incentive to do that. And the most common way to do that is money, frankly. And I would argue that like the internet itself was not decentralized in the sense that it was quickly commoditized or quickly centralized on commercial platforms. I mean, like GeoCities, Yahoo, and AOL, and from the very beginning, our experience on the web was almost entirely mediated by corporate interests who were making money off of us. So that alone doesn't really decentralize anything. That's just distributed. And what we get with something like Bitcoin, and I think probably one of the coolest sort of revolutions that it represents, is it for the first time gave financial interest to people to run nodes. And now we're seeing with the Lightning Network, we're getting the same kind of thing. And I don't know, I just, what we are doing is not really making comment on, or we're not trying to build a new network, right? Because we don't have a way to provide a financial interest for people to run nodes. I think it would be really cool if someone bound a Bitcoin node, a Lightning node with Nostr and an authentic data anchoring system to replace, basically a payments processor like Venmo or something with a pub sub, microblogging platform like Twitter. Nostr replaces Twitter effectively, and then the anchoring service allows anybody to deal in authentic data. So you could do like a fully authentic replacement of payments and basic, Twitter-like behavior with a financial incentive. Like, great, I want to see that project. I'm not going to do that. What we're doing is trying to commoditize the internet as a whole. Once you get these tools, these open source tools that unbind data from time and space, now you no longer have to have things like DIDs. You can use URLs. You don't need to have something like trusted storage, this bound to a blockchain like Filecoin or anything like that, because you can use S3 buckets. Authentic data can be transmitted through time and space in any form over any medium, over any amount of time. So I can put it into a file that's a standard file format and put it in an S3 bucket. I could shoot it to you, Katherine, as a QR code printed on a piece of paper, attached to the leg of a carrier pigeon. It doesn't matter how you get it. You can immediately verify that it came from me and that I still stand behind it and that it hasn't been modified.